you take care of your health is very, very important in your wealth plan. If you destroy your health, then you're going to lose all your money because you're going to spend all your money on medication. You're going to spend all your money on doctor's visits. You're going to spend all your money on surgeries and all this other stuff, right? Or whatever expensive insurance you have to buy because your blood pressure is too high and everything else. And I was talking to, and this is now I want to talk about as we dig into this. I want to talk a little bit about family wealth and just sort of like the things that people don't really talk about when they talk about, everybody talks about money, 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 money. Everybody's always talking about money, money, money. And I don't really know if everybody understands not just where money comes from, but also how to preserve and protect money when you actually get it. And I was talking this morning with a young lady who's in her 30s, and she was talking about her mother was the primary caregiver of her grandmother. And then her mother had a stroke. So her mother got sick. So now the primary caregiver is sicker than the person they were taking care of. And I said, wow, that happened in my family. My mother was the primary caregiver for my father, who was the sickest person in the house. Now my mother is sicker than my father. My mother, has she's dealing with some cancer now. And so it was kind of like, whoa. So I said, have you ever heard of the sandwich generation? And she said, no, what is that? I said, the sandwich generation is typically between, like, say, 40 and 55, or maybe 35 and 55. But these are people that are stuck in their sandwich because they're taking care of children, which can be expensive and time consuming. It can be very draining. It's very expensive in terms of time and money and energy. And then also they're taking care of aging parents and grandparents, right? Which is also expensive and time consuming, very draining of all kinds of resources, emotional resources, financial resources, etc. Give me a yes if you've been in that category or if you've seen this before. And the thing about the sandwich generation is, I said, look, you're a little bit young to be going through this. But one thing that I told her is, I said, as I really think about wealth, and you guys know I just wrote that book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. You can get a copy at my website, boycewatkins.com, if you'd like to get one. Or it's also on Amazon. Just if you get it on Amazon, if you could at least leave a review, I'd really appreciate that. And one of the things, so I've been thinking a lot about all the things that relate to wealth that we don't typically think about, particularly as it pertains to families and family structure. So one of the things we both noticed was, I said, number one, if you have a person who's older who doesn't have any kids, who takes care of that older person? And I told her a story about this lady, a black woman who works as a nurse in the stroke ward. And she said I was in the stroke ward, and there were all these handsome black men, good job having men, and I'd say, well, where's your wife to take care of you? And they would say, oh, I was a player. I didn't have time for no wife. And because they saw a wife or children as a liability, they saw it as, oh, I can't afford it. It's gonna take a lot of my time and energy. It's a waste of my time. And next thing you know, you have these problems, and suddenly, you're a liability, right? You need someone to come and help take care of you. And that was the first thought, right? About older people. That so every young person becomes an older person, and who you invest in while you're younger, like, so you're in your 30s, you might say, oh, having kids is a burden. I just want to be single. I just want to have fun and live my life. I get that. I totally understand that. But the problem is that when you get in your 50s and 60s and 70s, the people that you poured into are going to be the ones that are going to show up and take care of you. A child who's been neglected, if you were their daddy that never came by to see them because you were too busy living your life, he's not going to come see you. When I heard my biological father died, it didn't affect me at all. When I heard that he was sick or died in the shower of a heart attack or something like that, it just didn't do anything for me. I was like, I don't even know this guy, and that's because the things you invest in are the things that reap benefits for you. It's just like investing. Remember, investing isn't just money. Investing is anything that you put your energy or resources into that has a payoff. Or a farmer that plants a seed gets a harvest. He cannot get a harvest if he planted no seeds. Right? You do not get a harvest if you don't plant any seeds. So I think you want to ask yourself, and this is not judgmental. It's not me telling you how to live your life. This is me saying, ask yourself, what am I planting? Where am I planting my seeds? Right. So if I'm spending time with my son every day and we're forming a bond and a connection, well, that's where I'm planting this seed. and that's going to be a harvest later on. Um, with my, I'll just say this, I made millions of dollars because of my baby brother, who was my number one business partner, who really brought a lot of great ideas to the table. He brought me $1 million ideas that we executed on and were able to be very successful with. Well, where did that come from? Well, his loyalty came from the fact that when I was a kid, I planted a seed in him. I didn't do it intentionally, and my mother made me do it. But I bonded with him very deeply because I used to change his diapers, and I used to babysit him every single day when I was 12 or 13 years old. So when I got older and I needed a loyal business partner, the loyalty was already there. He was already down. He was ready. He would take chances with me. If I made a mistake, he was right there with me. If I didn't have enough money to pay him, he didn't run off. A stranger will run off on you. A stranger isn't gonna be loyal if the money ain't right, right? And no, nor should they be, right? I mean, why would they be? They don't know you. They don't care about you, right? A family member does. The other thought that I had on this, and this is a really important part of the wealth conversation. I want you to at least process this. The average child, it costs $300,000 to raise one child in America. So it means if you have 5 kids, it's going to cost you about 1.5 million on average to raise those 5 kids. So this is why single parenthood tends to lead to poverty for the mother, and also extreme financial desperation for the father, especially if a man is not thoughtful about how he spreads his seed and stuff like that, right? And then, but then the added component to that that's interesting is, on one hand, children, while they are a financial responsibility, they can either be in, just like in a business, it can be either an expense or it can be an investment, right? So an expense is something where you put money out and you don't get anything back. You spend money and it's gone. An investment is where it's almost like putting money in a bucket. So the more you put in the bucket, the more you have in the bucket. It doesn't disappear. It's like when I invested in my basement, and I told my wife, I said, let's just do it big. Let's get the nicest of everything. She said, Boyce, we can't afford to spend that money. I said, we're not spending anything. This is an investment. This is going to increase the value of our house, probably more than what we spend. So ultimately, kids can be either a liability or an investment. So I want you to process this. So I was talking. This came from a conversation I literally had this morning. I've been thinking about it already, but my thoughts are kind of coming together on this. So either the problem we've seen with a lot of people when they get older and they hit retirement is either you have no kids, that so there's nobody that shows up, or either no kids that you poured into. So these might not, you don't have any non-biological kids you poured into. Maybe you didn't want to be a step parent or whatever, which is fine. Or you don't have biological kids that you poured into, or you just chose not to have kids, or you have just one child. That was another thing we pointed out. Was I said it must be a lot. It must be tough on you as the only child to have to uproot your whole life at the age of 31, right? 31 is when it's kind of almost like peak mating season for women, because at 31 your body is your clock is ticking a little bit. To be honest with you, this is I read all this in books. I'm a nerd. I read books, and and they basically you're eager to go to that next stage of life, if you know what I mean, marriage, kids, and all that. So but she's uprooting all that to go back and take care of her mother. And she said, yeah, it's really tough. And she said also her mother is an only child also. So her mother, being the only child of her grandmother, was forced to be the primary caretaker of the grandmother. So I said, it's interesting when I think about investing and buying stock and real estate, I'm always thinking about things like diversification and spreading, my wealth in different places. And I said, wow, it's very interesting that it's almost like having more kids is a type of diversification. It's not that it's almost like that. It is like that. Like literally, I know all the financial theories, and I'm telling you that's what it is. So because I told her what happened when my parents got sick. I said when my parents got sick, there were 3 of us. What did that mean? Give me a yes. Give me a yes if you're following this. Give me a yes if you can relate to any of this. I want to make sure. I hope I'm talking about something people can understand. Where I'm coming from on this, because I really wanted to share this with you, because I'm learning. Life is a university, and I'm studying every day. I've had my PhD 20 years now, but every day I learn something new just by thinking about life. So I said when my parents got sick, number one, there were 3 of us. So that meant that all 3 of us could spread out the labor. We could spread out the expense. It wasn't falling all on the back of one person. And this is an economic theory. This is basically what they might call risk sharing, or even just you can just think of as load sharing. You're sharing the workload, right? And then also uh, the other component was I said it wasn't just that there were three of us, it was also the way our parents trained us as kids, right? They poured into us in certain ways so that we would show up for them. Because some people have kids that are just all over the place, right? That are just doing only God knows what, don't care about the parents, don't care about anything but themselves. And in fact, I've seen situations where the child is a liability, to the aging parents. So you're 75 years old living on Social Security, and it'd be nice to have a son that shows up and says, "Hey, mama, what do you need?" Or, "Hey, mama," like my mom, my parents told me they wanted to pay the house off. I said, "Okay, great, let's pay the house off," right? Versus having a son who shows up and is trying to, steal your purse so he can get money for crack, right? Or calling you because he needs you to bail him out of jail for the 18th time, or is dropping his kids off because his 8 babies mamas need a babysitter or whatever, right? So ultimately, that whole thing, I don't want to be preachy on this, but whatever values you have that you're pouring into kids, I mean, that's really important, and it really shows up for you when you get older, because getting older is interesting, because there's a vulnerability that happens that people don't see when they're in their 30s and 40s. They say, "Oh, I'm healthy, I'm strong, I can do this by myself. I don't need any help." In fact, I even when I mentioned a comment about this on Instagram, there was a lady who said it's selfish to expect. It's selfish for you to have kids just so they can take care of you. And I said, no. I said, number one, I said, repeat that to me when you're 75 years old and you can't get up off the floor, right? Just think about it then. Right now, it seems that way, and I get that. My parents were very insistent on making sure that me, my brother, and my sister lived our own lives. They wanted us to be independent. They wanted us to be happy. They wanted us to travel the world and do whatever. Why? Well, because mom and daddy got it. They're taking care of themselves. They never called us to borrow money, none of that silly stuff, all that. But when they got to a point where they couldn't do these things on their own anymore, then suddenly the kids do become relevant again. They come back into the picture. And the other thing too is it's I believe that it's not appropriate really to look at it as, oh, I'm just using these kids. I'm gonna have a bunch of kids so that I can have somebody to take care of me when I get older. No, don't forget, when you have these kids, you're sacrificing. I mean, any parents in here? Did anybody know what sacrifice it takes to be a good parent? Give me a yes in the chat if you understand the difference between being a good parent and just making a baby, right? There's a hell of a sacrifice. I mean, you're giving up your life for these kids, all thousands of hours of work, all kinds of energy and time. You could be at the club, like me and my wife are like, we could be having so much fun if we just abandon these dang kids, but we pour into them, and they appreciate it, and then and then this is what reciprocity looks like, right? This whole rugged independence. I don't need nobody. I don't need no man. I don't need no kids. I don't need nobody. But I just got me. And, maybe I got me and Jesus, and that's it. That's not really how wealth is built. That's not how strong institutions develop. It develops it with what you call reciprocity. And I talk about this a lot in my book, that it's sort of like one of those things where, okay, sometimes you have to make the investment, but sometimes the institution invests in you. Sometimes you're the one making the sacrifice, and sometimes others are coming through for you. You don't have to do it all by yourself. You don't have to be stuck all by yourself. Right? In fact, being stuck all by yourself is typically a recipe for failure. And that ability to understand that needing help and wanting help from the things that you poured into, that doesn't make you weak or pathetic. That just makes you human. We all need help at some point. And it's one thing if I'm asking for help from people that I never did anything for. It's another thing if I say, "Hey, you know what? I've had your back 50 times in a row. Can you have my back this one time? I really need your help." Right? And this is what led us to create the Black Financial Therapy Department in the Black Business School, is because there's a lot of therapy in there necessary in terms of just doing the necessary level of reflection to really understand your life as a portfolio. I call it God's portfolio. And what I mean by that, a portfolio is pretty much, let's look up the definition of the word portfolio. And we're going to get to stocks again in a minute, but let's look up the definition of a portfolio. The definition of a portfolio is a range of investments held by a person or organization. A range of investments held by a person or organization. Now I want to go deeper. Let's look up the word investment. Investment definition: the action or process of investing for profit or material result. Okay, I want to go deeper than that. It's an asset or item acquired. Here, I like this better. An investment is an asset or item acquired with the goal of generating income or appreciation. So not just and remember, income isn't just financial. Income is resources. Remember, there were the if you look at the history of humanity, we've spent more time on this earth without money than we've spent with money. There was a time where there was no money, there was no currency, dollar bills and all that. But even then, you always knew who the rich guy was and who the poor person was. You knew that. And it's like, well, how would you know a person's rich or poor if there's no money? Well, because most wealth is not in the form of money. So a rich person, even animals know which animals are wealthy versus the ones that are not. Female animals tend to be attracted. Female mammals are attracted to the males that have more wealth. Well, how do they measure wealth? Well, if it's a giraffe or something, it might be measured by how much food he has and how much land he occupies, right? Or a female male bucks, when a female doe is looking to figure out who she wants to mate with, she naturally, instinctively, she'll see a group of bucks. They all hang in packs like gangs. She'll go to the middle of the pack to find the person she wants to have a baby with, because that's the guy who has the most wealth and power. He's the one who's able to occupy the center of the circle. The weaker ones are the ones on the fringes. They're the ones who kind of like because they don't want the center because they can't get there. They can't take that and occupy that territory. So the female naturally instinctually goes right to the middle, and that's where she finds her baby daddy. So let me keep reading this. Let's see. An investment is an asset or item acquired with the goal of generating income or appreciation. Appreciation refers to an increase in value of an asset over time. So an asset, again, an asset isn't just your money. An asset can be your health. Your health is an asset, right? If you lose your health, then you've lost something more valuable than money. An asset is also things like relationships, right? So ultimately, when you talk about the appreciation of assets or receiving income or making an investment, all that can be, you could take money completely out of the equation and know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've ever had a relationship that went bad, you know what it means to make an investment that you regret making. And you have regret because you say, gosh, I wasted time with this person, or I gave energy to this person that wasn't worth it, or whatever. So ultimately, I encourage you to think of it that way. And the conclusion I would make on the conversation about kids is that kids really are part of your portfolio. Your family is a part of your portfolio in the sense that if you did say sacrifice and have 6 kids, and you're pouring into those kids and you're teaching them how to be on code, you're teaching them how to build wealth, you're making investments for them long term, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to be the richest old person, on your block, because when you get older, you're going to have 6 kids that all went to college and have money in the bank, who love their family, who are going to do anything and everything in their power to make sure that you are comfortable and well taken care of and well protected and provided for. That's very different from the other guy who said, back in the 1970s, oh, I want to be a player. I want to just do whatever. I ain't got time for these kids. So he's got a bunch of children splattered all over the place that he never poured into, and those kids don't care anything about him. So just keep that in mind, as you sort of think about long-term investing. And when we talk about things like retirement, your retirement preparation isn't just how much money you have in your 401k. That's part of it. But I know people who have a better retirement situation than people that have lots of money. I know people with very little money in their 401k who have an excellent retirement situation versus people who have tons of money who are really struggling in retirement because they thought that all their investments had to be in money. Okay, so let's dive in again. Now I'd like to ask if you got